now. I'm not going to make a long introduction. I understand most of us here are familiar with what the Include project is about. And as we wait for more people to join in, all I'll have to say is I wish to thank the local researcher, Dr. Mohammed Shormani, for organizing everything. And I also wish to thank the Cyprus Ministry of Education and the Education Institutes of Cyprus for issuing a circular, a call for paper, sorry, a circular, not a call for papers, to all the teachers of English and other subjects in high schools in Cyprus. Hopefully these will be joining us later. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically finish this very short introduction. Actually, I gave myself 10 minutes for the introduction, expecting there to be technical problems. And I'll just give the floor to Mohammed, who's going to make a short presentation, what is Include, why Include. And as I said, we're going to have the slides available to anyone who wants to use them for any purpose after we finish this meeting. Okay, so the material is going to be available. So I'm going to mute myself now and give the floor to Mohammed. Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Fivus, and I would like to say a phrase that you are always my source of inspiration. This is the truth. Thank you, everybody. I would like to present the topic, what is Include and why Include. The nature of Include integrated content and language via a unified digital environment is an innovative teaching methodology based on CLIL, content and language integrated learning approach to teaching. This approach or this project actually comes as a result of the European Union Commission underlining the need to integrate in the educational curriculum new ways of learning more effective for a society that is becoming increasingly mobile and digital, such as CLIL, which is not so widely spread informal curriculum. Partner countries, there are 5 countries: Greece, Italy, Cyprus, Romania, and Spain. Main objectives of Include. The first is developing a common European framework for CLIL targeted to lower secondary and upper secondary schools 1 and 3 that promotes linguistic and subject-related competences and soft skills, with reference to the Council recommendation on key competences 2018. Improving student linguistic competences, subject competences, and key competences, in particular, multilingual and digital competences, personal, social, learning to learn competences, citizenship competence, and cultural awareness. We developed, or the Include aims to also in a participative way to develop an open access, multimodal, and interactive online platform usable by teachers to develop and share CLIL scenarios. 120 interdisciplinary scenarios will be developed within the project, 40 of which to be tested in the 5 European partner countries. Include mission. The Include project mission focuses on multi-literacy, where teachers and students will realize the increasing importance of cultural and linguistic diversity, digital literacy, enabling students to conduct research on the web or in physical space, to set strategies for research, to locate, manage, and evaluate data. Communication, actually, also it include focus on communication in such a way to encourage students to use English and other foreign languages in a functional and not in a mechanic, scholastic way. Collaboration, where to promote teamwork and collaborate carrying out of these activities. Creative and innovation, urging students to explore their imagination and creative minds. Autonomous learning, teaching learners to design own pathway to process material and to decide upon which activities to perform in order to achieve the expected outcomes. Europeanity, this is a very important concept in include, where or to adapt or adapting a European perspective in the approaches of the various subject areas. Europeanity, Europeanity is an innovative aspect of the include project. Europeanity is a transversal element that the project aims to value in order to promote active citizenship and prevent populism, xenophobia, and violence. It intended also in an inclusive and open way as a sense of belonging to a European community where linguistic and cultural differences are considered as a resource. The inclusion of Europeanity in include aims to the experiential and energetic involvement of our students in issues of European history, geography, civil rights, arts, literature, and science, so that they will understand various aspects of Europeanity and empower the sense of being included to it. Phases of include, there are 4 phases. The first is the preparation phase, where we carry out the beginning of the project. During this phase, pilot folders will be developed.
Yeah.
The implementation phase, during which the platform and the toolkit will be delivered, as well as teacher training activities for its use and evaluation of the sample folder. The content development phase, during which content will be provided by the participating schools and content rights will be provided by Action Aid. This phase also includes teacher training activities and dissemination events. The evaluation phase, during which there will be evaluation or project outcomes and dissemination events. Project activities, activity types. The project or include management and implementation activities, intellectual outputs, deliverables, transitional project meetings, multiple events, learning, teaching, training activities, a number of other activities, including Skype meetings, email communication, etc. Educational scenario. I will just talk about the features or the characteristics of education scenarios in this presentation. They aim or intended to develop knowledge, develop transversal skills, develop competences, develop attitudes, foster Europeanity, use the CLIL approach to language and subject teaching learning, explore the different IT and methodological tools needed. There are also quantitative and qualitative indicators of the include intellectual outputs. Educational toolkit, indicative and quantitative indicators, number of people involved per year, 16 teachers, 240 students, 4 researchers. The number of teachers that will use and test include approach to CLIL scenarios and tools are 24. The number of education scenarios and tools created by teachers throughout the project, 120. The number of students that will use the educational scenarios, at least 720. This is intellectual output 1. qualitative indicators, positive learner and teacher feedback on tools and guidelines at the end of the testing phase, level of usability of the toolkit, positive self-assessment evaluation from learners and teachers on developed competences, positive feedback on the high usability of the toolkits, quantitative indicators for satisfaction will be defined in the evaluation framework. Consistency between the scenarios developed and the criteria set in the toolkit. Intellectual output two, which is the include platform. The quantitative indicators, number of visitors 2,000, number of people at least 2,000, number of people registered on the platform at least 500, the number of toolkit downloads from the include expected 2,000, number of feedback given on downloads 1,000. Qualitative indicators, percentage of positive feedbacks from registered online users on the usability of the platform, greater than 80% of positive indications, percentage of positive feedback from the different target groups on the usability of tools, greater than 80% positive indications. Intellectual output 3, 40 pilot scenarios. The following are the quantitative indicators. Number of pilot scenarios 40, number of teachers involved 16, number of students involved in the testing phase 400, number of persons participating in the different evaluation groups 100, formal adoption by the partner schools of the include model in CLIL classes. Qualitative indicators, percentage of positive feedback from registered user of online community, greater than 80% of positive indications, increase of linguistic performance and target key competence in the students participating in the testing phase. Include work plan. The include work plan contains 9 work packages. The first one focuses on the definition of the different processes involved in the research cycle. Work plan 2 is dedicated to the preparation and testing phase. Work plan 3 is dedicated to the concept of include intellectual outputs 1, 2, and 3. Work plan 4 will be dedicated to the implementation phase. In this work package, include outputs and deliverables will be implemented in lower secondary and upper secondary schools. Work plan 5 focuses on receiving feedback from the partners concerning the testing phase and the developments, modification, changes, etc. that will be incorporated on the previous work packages. Work package 6 focuses on the project the dissemination plan, including a publication plan. Work package 7 will be focused on the evaluation and assessment phase throughout the project cycle. Work package 8 is dedicated to include management, responsible of which is CNR, IRPPS. Work package 9 will be dedicated to risk management plan, in which the difficulties encountered will be investigated and the solutions envisaged. Responsibility. All project partners have each a responsibility to deliver high quality intellectual output, deliverables, activities, and results. The key roles of the partners may take the following forms. Project coordinator. The main task of the project coordinator PC is to ensure coordination and collaboration among all partners, as well as any type of activities such as management, planning, and control. Steering team. The steering team is responsible for the project implementation and is the decision-making body of the consortium. A work package leader. Each work package must have a leader. The leader of each work package works in close collaboration and contact with all partners of other work packages. And thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Now, before we move on, let's make sure that before Claudia makes her presentation, let's make sure that we can hear Cleopatra. Oh, Cleopatra, can you speak up? Cleopatra, we cannot hear you, so maybe you should either change your headset or you should change computer. Right. So are there any, I don't think we should have any questions, but I mean, if there are any issues you want to raise with Mohammed, we have like some time before we move on to Claudia's presentation. Okay, right. So, Mohammed, thank you for this. And
thank you very much.
Let me remind everyone that this meeting is recorded, but it's not going to be disseminated before letting you know and getting your consent. So I think we should move on to Claudia's presentation. So Claudia Pennacchiotti from Ceneri, Italy, is going to talk about include skills and competences. So on to you, Claudia. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Carlos. So, okay. I'm Claudia Pennacchiotti from the CNR from Italy. The CNR is the coordinator of this project, and I am a researcher, and I work as a researcher in this project in Include. So I will go on with competencies, with the focus on competencies, and namely on the approach, the Include approach to competencies. Firstly, I would like to put your attention on the general concept of competencies that is not univocal. I think I say there are many different frameworks on competencies. So Include refers to three main institutional frameworks, but how were competence gradually introduced in the education, because competencies did not arose firstly in a school educational context, but competence firstly arose in a business context, namely in human resources and in a recruitment and career plan context, and then slowly getting into a lifelong learning context to give an answer to the need to better match the world of work and education. So they became, competencies became something like a common glossary, a common language that put better in touch, to put better in touch business and educational context. Then slowly and in a not simple process, with a not simple process, competencies get in the school context, but a very big difference, a strong difference already exists on the idea of competence coming from the business context and the school context. While competence in business world are considered job requirement, in the educational field, they are considered as a life requirement. So in a widened perspective, what do we mean with life requirement is what all individuals need for the personal fulfillment. So it's a more widened perspective. Nowadays, competencies are adopted, competencies framework are adopted by the most important institution that work in educational context, and also by most of the educational system in Europe. So are a very crucial framework of reference, but as I already said, there are many different frameworks. What are the reference framework for include? Include refers mainly to the framework proposed by the European Council and adopted by European Commission in the recommendation on key competencies for lifelong learning, firstly published in 2006 and revised in 2018. This framework is going to be improved in Include project with some inputs coming from other two frameworks, the OECD framework and the UNESCO framework. So coming back to the European Council framework, this framework identify 8 different key competencies that are those competencies which all individuals need for personal fulfillment and development, for employability, for social inclusion, for adopt sustainable lifestyle and successful life in peace society. So it's a very wide perspective on the individual lives and collective, of course, life of people. What are these 8 competencies? Are the literacy competencies, so the ability to identify, understand, express, create, and interpret concepts in both in an oral and written form. The multiliteracy, that is one of the most important competencies in CLIL, so the ability to communicate in another language. Math and science, so the ability to develop and apply mathematical thinking and the scientific approach to the reality in daily life. Another crucial competence in Include is the digital competence. This competence is intended not just as the ability to use digital tools, but also to use the digital tools in a safe, conscious, and in a safe and conscious way. So also the digital literacy. Then personal, social and learning to learn competencies, that is the ability to reflect upon oneself, to manage one's own learning and career, to communicate with others. And citizenship is another pillar for Include, is the ability to act as a responsible citizen and to fully participate in civic and social life. And finally, the entrepreneurship, that means to be able to involve having an understanding of and respect for new ideas and creatively express cultural and entrepreneurial capacity to act upon opportunities and ideas and to transform them into values and others. And before, of course, was the cultural awareness, that is the capability to involve, having an understanding of and a respect for how ideas and meaning are creatively expressed and communicated in different cultures. Also, these competencies is a very crucial competence in the Include framework. So this approach, this framework to competence is also integrated, as I already said, with competencies coming from other two frameworks. The OECD framework developed by OECD in the framework of the PISA survey, where OECD detect the level of literacy, of math and science competencies, and of the attitude and problem-solving competencies of students in the school system. In this framework, since the 2016, OECD provide also a new aspect, the global competence model. That is a model developed to give an answer to the strong challenge that the globalization of the globalization, and is intended as knowledge, attitude, and skills crucial to live in a global world and cope with this complexity. Finally, the UNESCO framework that is also very oriented to an intercultural approach to competencies, and UNESCO is in charge since many years to manage a reflection on the futures of education. And in this framework, this conceptual framework was developed. So, competence in include approach. Following this reflection developed by European Council, OECD, UNESCO, include, as I already said, adopt as a main framework the European recommendation on key competencies, where competencies are defined as a combination of knowledge, skill, attitude, where knowledge is composed by of the facts and figures, concepts, ideas, and theories which are already established on a certain area or subject. Skills are defined as the ability and capacity to carry out process and use the existing knowledge to achieve results. And finally, attitude are described as the mindset and disposition to act or react to ideas, person, or situation. As underlined by UNESCO, typically competencies does not depend on the one single skill, one single attitude, and one single knowledge, but are but engage a complex set of skill, attitude, and knowledges. So competencies overlap and interlock. Skills such as critical thinking, creativity, problem solving are transversal among different competencies. For example, critical thinking is embedded by personal and learning to learn competence, but also by citizenship competence. So all competencies overlap and interlock. What are the competencies mainly enhanced in an include approach? We must say that school and education are going to redefine their role and redefine their framework of reference, considering the new context, the new challenges of coming from the reality. We live in a more and more globalized world, more and more complex and more uncertain. So also the school must and the educational context must revise their educational framework, and the competencies framework proposed by European Commission, UNESCO, and OECD go in this sense, in this way. So include, select among the 8 key competencies identified by European Commission 5 competencies strictly related to the challenge to promote in the student the student capability in being an active citizen able to cope with the complexity of the reality. The focus is so on digital, multilingual, cultural awareness, personal, social and learning to learn, and finally citizenship competencies, but also on some specific skill provided by these competencies, such as critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, team working, communication, intercultural communication. So how Include will promote these 5 competencies that are at the basis of each educational scenario that will be created under the Include approach, regardless to the specific subject of the CLIL scenario. So first of all, the digital competence. Digital competence is intended not just as the ability, the capability to use digital tools, but also as the capability to use this tool responsibly and consciously and safely. So this competence in Include is promoted both to the students and to the teachers. Referring to the teachers, they will work, are already working in a digital environment that is created under Common Creative and is a Moodle environment, so free and open, where they find tools needed to create their scenarios and their working materials and so on. So looking at the students, in the Include scenario, a wide use of ICT tools is promoted, and students are invited to work in a digital environment, also together, and to create content, for example, making some research online in internet and so on. Multilingual and cultural awareness are promoted by means of the CLIL approach. So indeed, CLIL is an approach that which is neither language learning nor subject learning, but an amalgam of both. Indeed, Coyle, Hood, and Marsh, that are the main author in the CLIL approach, they clarify that CLIL is not a new form of language and education, is not a new form of subject education, is an innovative fusion of both. That means that CLIL scenarios have 2 main aims: the subject, so the content, and the language, so the communication, and are a balance of these two axes, these 2 aims. And moreover, working and thinking in another language open a new window on the reality, and the student can analyze and understand the world using other lens, so the cultural dimension and also the cognitive dimension are involved, enriching their understanding of concept and broaden their concept mapping resources. So starting from these 4 axes: content, communication, culture, and cognition, Coyle, Hood, and Marsh developed the 4C model that, of course, improve multilingual competencies and cultural awareness. But Include add 2 more C to this, try to add 2 more C to this framework, namely cooperation and co-creation, that enhance and underline the transdisciplinary and participatory approach promoted by the Include approach, of course. What does we mean with cooperation and co-creation? Cooperation is not a novelty in the in CLIL, because de Morissin already introduced this concept, this idea, but referring to the cooperation that exists in a CLIL process, in the CLIL approach among teachers, subject teachers, and I use the plural because in a CLIL scenario could be involved more than one subject teacher, because often CLIL scenario are transdisciplinary, and language teacher. So she underlined the importance of the cooperation among these two kinds of teacher, both in the design phase of the scenario and in the implementation phase of the scenario. Include, add two more dimensions to the cooperation idea: the cooperation among teacher and students, and among students. An example of this cooperation enhanced in the include approach is the cooperation in the evaluation phase. Indeed, strongly promote to provide in the include CLIL scenarios the self-evaluation of students. In this phase, students and teachers co-design the learning goals of the student, the learning strategy of the student. The student is supported by teachers, and co-evaluate the results reached by the student and the learning process, of course. But include, promote also peer evaluation approach. So also students cooperate among them in the evaluating each other. Co-creation is another crucial concept in a dimension in the include approach, and enhance the participatory approach of include. Co-creation is intended as a co-creation of content and knowledge. The different actors involved in an include scenario, basically teachers and students, cooperate in implementing the evaluation, for example, the evaluation process, co-create, and in this process, they co-create knowledge about the effectiveness of the learning strategy of the student, but also about the effectiveness of the scenario in promoting competencies and learning in students. And student and teachers cooperate also in creating, whenever it's possible, in creating and designing the scenarios. This is not mandatory, but is enhanced by include. These two new C together strengthen the participatory and transdisciplinary approach already existing in the CLIL framework. Last competence promoted by the include CLIL scenarios is the citizenship competence. This is a very challenging competencies nowadays, and indeed contemporary societies call for complex form of belonging and citizenship. We must consider the widened globalization, so students are daily in touch with people coming and content and media coming from and meaning coming from very far cultures. So the school must support students in acquiring those competencies needed to cope with this challenge, to be able to face the new cultures in a very open way. So citizenship is a very crucial competence for school, we think, and is strongly promoted by Include. Include start from the definition of the concept and the definition of citizenship competencies in the Council recommendation on lifelong learning, and try to widen and evolve this concept in providing some input coming from the global competences and UNESCO frameworks. So as enhanced by UNESCO and by the laws, by appreciating differences in the communities to which they belong, the students and young people can learn to live together in a globalized world and as global citizens. So we started from this consideration and this point, and consider this a specific focus so is devoted to citizenship. What is the concept of citizenship promoted in the European framework? Is the ability to act as a responsible citizen and to fully participate in civic and social life, based on understanding social, economic, legal, and political concepts and structures, as well as global development and sustainability. These competencies is enhanced by the global competencies, that is the capacity and the ability to examine local, global, and intercultural issues, to understand and appreciate the perspective and the worldview of others, to engage in open, appropriate, and effective interaction with people from different cultures. This is a more wide and more open way to intend the citizenship competence. Indeed, in the European framework, citizenship is strongly related to the Europe and the Europe concept, the Europe idea, and the European cultures. So we try to get into this idea a more global perspective from OECD framework. This process will be developed under the umbrella of the Europeanity. Mohammed already spoke about this idea of Europeanity. Europeanity is a very complex concept and is not univocal defined, but there are many perspectives and approaches to Europeanity. The approach that adopted by Include is an open approach. Europe is not considered as a market and a custom union, is not considered as a cathedral, an open cathedral, but an agora, as an agora is an open agora where people coming from different countries and cultures can exchange ideas and co-create and negotiate and update meanings, values according to their crossed feeling, vision, and values. So according to this, the quality of being European refers to the capability of approaching the reality and to exploring other culture perspective from this agora. In Include, this perspective of Europeanity is widened by some dimension coming from the OECD global competence. So what provide global competence? The global competence developed by OECD provide some 4 dimensions main dimension and 4 other elements that overlap together. The 4 global dimensions are understanding and appreciate the perspective of worldviews of others, engage in open, appropriate, and effective interaction across cultures, take action for collective well-being and sustainable development, examine local, global, and intercultural issues. These 4 dimensions are supported by 4 factors: knowledge, attitude, and skills already provided by the framework of the European Commission, but OECD has the value dimension intended as the valuing human dignity and diversity that are pillar for the European idea and also the Europeanity. So include, starting from these 4 dimensions and 4 elements, and trying to integrate them in the citizen European framework, include promote a widened concept of citizenship competence that encourage the student to face to the global world and other cultures at global level, starting from the consciousness, of course, of coming from a multicultural society, namely Europe, founded on values that promote inclusion, peace, sustainability, and human rights respect. So these are the 5 main competencies provided in Include, and so I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudia. That was actually very good and very informative. And as I said, given that you know, we can keep the presentations, maybe we can make them available to a wider public later. Are there any issues you'd like to raise with our speaker? Well, I guess not. Right. Actually, there's some overlap between your presentation and mine, which makes mine easier. So wonderful. Now, no, that's great. I mean, it was expected, obviously. Now, Cleopatra, can you hear us? Okay, I hope. Cleopatra, can you turn your? Let me unmute you. I am muted you, so doesn't work. Okay, Cleopatra, can you hear us? Please unmute your microphone. Okay.
Can you hear me? I don't
yes,
know
great, excellent. Wow.
Yes, the
okay.
problem now is you can hear me.
Yeah, right. Finally.
Yes.
Okay, I'll try and fix it. But okay, since you can hear me, that's good. So I can present, but I'll try to fix so that I can hear you too.
Okay. No, you cannot hear us. Wonderful. Okay. Right. So, okay, fine. Fair enough. Wow. So everything seems infected in one way or another, including computers. Wow. Anyway, so now what's going to happen is I'm going to give you my short, I hope, presentation, which of course will overlap with much of what we heard earlier. And yeah, that's my screen. Good. So my topic is, of course, you know, me being the theoretically minded person here, my presentation is going to be about CLIL as an element of, as the basic ground, actually, not an element of Include. And this is a presentation prepared together with Mohammed, obviously, who does all the great work. on our side. So, well, we all know that CLIL is a recent approach, you know, where subject matter and the teaching of non-native language are integrated. You know, again, you know, the content and the non-native language or the second language or the foreign language, there's a big debate about the correct term for these things are mutually and holistically integrated, as opposed to provide motivation and added value to the educational outcomes. In other words, combining language teaching with the teaching of a subject matter, you get much more than the sum of the parts, or at least that's the idea. And okay, you know, CLIL is not, of course, a new form of language education. It is not a new form of subject education. It's basically fusing both. And the hope, actually, and I'd like to stress that a bit, again, being the theoretically minded person here, is that CLIL methodology will eventually have an impact on how we think. And the practical way this is going to happen is that the CLIL approach will make, or at least push, students to work and think in the L2. L2 is the neutral term instead of saying, you know, second language or foreign language. They are learning. Now, I have a personal anecdote here, which I very quickly share. At the beginning of my career, I taught at Open University in England, and one of my students, you know, Open Universities, I mean, I was something like 24 back then, 25, no, how old was I? 26. I was 26, and most of my students were above the age of 40, and one of my students was an Irish lady, age 60-something, who was doing a degree, and she had, in a sense, inadvertently been in a CLIL sort of environment. What I mean is that because she was raised in the Gaeltacht, the Irish-speaking part of Ireland, all her education was in Irish, including mathematics, geography, everything. Ireland, of course, being an English-speaking country de facto, this created a very interesting situation when it came to her educational and professional development. Interesting doesn't always mean easy, but you realize this was not CLIL. This was not a targeted, organized attempt to integrate content and the second language. It was rather trying to buttress, you know, uphold a dying national language by using it as a means to teach. The thing is that, you know, that's a bit anecdotal. Back then was my first contact with a situation where, you know, teaching a language, because I mean, educators had full understanding that Irish is not a language that is native even within the Gaeltacht. So teaching the language and teaching the subject matter were sort of fused. Now, why are we saying that we hope that CLIL has an impact on cognition? Because learning and thinking in another language may open a window to reality, not because of linguistic determinism or not because of beliefs that, you know, the kind of language we speak molds or even restricts our thought, but for two reasons. One is that students can understand and think about the world through a different lens. And the different lens is not the grammar and the vocabulary necessarily, it's mainly the culture. Language being a vessel for a culture. What happens is that during the CLIL process, what you do, especially in humanities and social sciences, you give students the opportunity to look at the world through a different culture, the vessel of which is the particular language. And the second thing, which is slightly more cognitive in its core, is that using CLIL, we help students enrich their conceptual addresses by broadening their conceptual mapping resources. What this means in plain English is the following. Suppose that you are taught about, cathedrals, some history lesson in your native language, and let's say that your native language is English or German. And the notion of, let's say, piety or religiousness comes with particular connotations. So the file, the conceptual address, the concept of piety or religiousness, which is related to the building of cathedrals, has a particular content. Now, by approaching your topic in a different language, let's say Italian, Spanish, whatever, you enrich your conceptual address with material, with information, with elements, call it what you want, coming from a different language. The connotations of pietà, for example, in Italian are very different. And also the core concept of pietà is very different in Italian than piety, is in German or in English or whatever it is in German. So there is a very interesting cognitive core to CLIL. And that's, as I said, I repeat that, is getting students to approach subject matters through the lens of a different culture, the vessel of which is the L2, the language, and two, by getting them to enrich conceptual addresses, basic fundamental concepts, by filling, let's say, the file, filling the box file with different resources. So by broadening their conceptual mapping, resources is the jargon. Now, the main objects of CLIL are, of course, and I'm going to go quickly through these things because these are very well known and also covered by Mohammed and Claudia. Improving the educational curriculum, fostering and encouraging students to achieve the appropriate level of academic performance. That's a more general aim, of course. Improving students' proficiency in both their mother tongue and the target language, placing equal importance on each. And here, the element of enriching your conceptual addresses can play a role. Developing intercultural understanding. Actually, it's quite a challenge studying, for example, history or geography through a different language. I did that at a very old age, when I was 22, in the framework of a 3-week summer institute thing, studying political history and history in French. And even that was quite an experience in terms of intercultural understanding. Developing social and thinking skills, fostering, of course, and enhancing citizenship, and of course, cultivating good practices of everyday life. It's not a secret that, any multilingual enterprise, and especially CLIL, in which multilingualism is of substance, right? We'll come back to this, opens up the way you think, hopefully, and definitely helps cultivate good practices in everyday life. So the 4 C's of CLIL, well, these are well known: cognition, how we move from lower order to higher order thinking skills; culture, well, this has been covered already. Culture in CLIL is about how we promote collaboration and respect within groups and among groups, of course. Content, well, content is about what aspects of content to focus on and how to provide natural, understandable content by relating it to previous experience. That relating it to previous experience is something that plays a fundamental role in Include, not just CLIL in general. Communication, again, how to increase student talk time and support communication. Again, another parenthesis, I'm trying to make my presentation a bit more anecdotal because I'm covering ground already covered by Mohammed and Claudia. Sometimes students are bored to death having to discuss the fixed topics of L2 instruction, like what I did in the summer, a day in the countryside. And sometimes, especially when it comes to languages like French or English, these exercises can be very culture specific. So for example, if you begin French, not in a CLIL framework, but in a traditional language teaching framework, one of the first things that you encounter, even at a very young age, is francophonie, the concept of the French-speaking world, and pop music, French pop music. Now, these might be exciting topics for some people, but it's very odd to begin your immersion in language inevitably immersing yourself in aspects of the culture, but in ways and through topics that don't really matter otherwise. So you're going to be immersed in francophonie and you're going to be immersed in French pop music exactly for the purpose of learning French, not because you independently care about these things. Maybe you will end up caring about them, who knows? But exactly, the CLIL approach is about making students, communicate, get interested, get involved, by scaffolding techniques and by using general specific terminology, exactly because, the content, so content and communication are related here, is something that perhaps they can relate to outside the language teaching framework. Now, this is the CLIL conceptual framework. We're all familiar with it, the 4Cs and how the 4Cs, branch out to particular, aspects, particular tasks and objectives. I'm not really crazy about reading out diagrams. So, basically here is what summarizes what we've already seen. Now, benefits, well, the benefits of CLIL, developing intercultural communication skills, these are becoming more and more important. Accessing subject-specific target language terminology. Again, this is important in the sense that, cross-referencing terminologies helps you, as I mentioned earlier, improve, and enhance your conceptual, your understanding of the world through enriching your conceptual addresses, improving overall target language competencies, obviously, developing oral communication skills, hopefully, and preparing for internationalism. I inserted this little heart emoji here because, again, another parenthesis, this is what the creation of artificial languages in the early 20th and late 19th century was about, right? Esperanto and all these languages, promoting internationalism by teaching people a different language. CLIL is a more modest, but definitely more realistic thing is, let's see what happens if you teach people geography through the medium of, let's say, Romanian, Spanish, Catalan, Italian, whatever. Let's see what happens if you teach French students, not just German, which they will do at school at some point, but if you teach history through German, in the context of Europe, this is important, like given the age-old French-German divide, what happens if you teach French students history in German, or even history of France in German, right? So CLIL is much more dynamic, and it should be even more ambitious than currently is, and is informed by such an ambition, as we saw in Claudia's presentation, right? And the discussion of Europeanity as an agora, not as a cathedral. We'll come back to that briefly. So CLIL benefits: enriching students' conceptual addresses, same thing, providing opportunities to study content from different perspectives, which nicely interacts with the previous bullet point, diversifying teaching methods and ways of classroom practice, which is something that educators have been struggling for at least the last 1.5 centuries, increasing learner motivation, which again is, the prize of any educational method, and developing among students a positive can-do attitude as language learners. So here is a part that, Mohammed basically contributed a lot to recent developments in the CLIL approach, and I liked that, so I decided to take like 4 minutes to share it with you. It has been proposed that the language teacher and the content subject teacher can cooperate in the classroom. Now, this is ideal, actually, in my mind. And given that we live in a time when people try to save money by making cuts in education, it's also an ideal that would be hard to achieve. But nevertheless, it's something that would seem to work. So how would the two teachers, the content teacher and the language teacher, cooperate? Well, obviously, first of all, the content teacher would teach the aspects related to the subject matter, and the language teacher would teach the aspects of the CLIL class, related to language, like grammar, language skills, writing skills, reading skills, etc. Now, in Goethe's 2008 paper, there's 6 different approaches to cooperation between the subject and language teachers. Now, hopefully, if there were, or if there are, high school teachers listening, or now or in the future, these would give good ideas about how we can, make a better use of the scenarios developed by Include, and generally a better use of the CLIL approach. So there's a classical approach. You have two teachers that have the same role in spreading the learning content to students. Now, that's not very good, right? The collaborative one, okay, with the language teacher and the content teacher interacting and working together and with the students. The supporting approach, where one teacher, basically the content teacher, right, working with students, the other, the language teacher, introducing specific topics. So the content teacher teaches the content, and the language teacher sort of supports the content teacher by introducing, like, look here, this type of vocabulary, look here, this grammatical construction, look at this discourse practice. Discourse practices, especially when you teach languages that come from distinct cultures, is important. Politeness, for example. The parallel approach, the students are split in two groups. The subject teacher introduces new content. The language teacher focuses on additional language materials, right? So not the supporting, but the parallel version, and then probably they switch. Well, maybe it would work in particular classrooms. In groups, students are split in groups on the basis of the level of competence. That's too familiar, perhaps. And supervising, one teacher spreads content and involves students, the other one observes them and possibly helps out if necessary. Okay. Now, evaluation in CLIL. So we have assessment of learning, assessing the learning process and to what extent the outcomes and competencies are achieved. Assessment as learning. I'm going quickly through these things because I understand you're familiar with them. Increases awareness about the learning processes and about the effectiveness of the teaching strategies adopted. And for learning, a continuous process of individual and collective reflection, right? A sort of meta kind of thing of the learning process, enhancing skills and attitudes, right? So, however, clearly as a method is not a panacea, right? It cannot do anything. I mean, it's better than other things. It's harder than other things, and that's why Include matters, and that's why Include was, selected to be funded with such enthusiasm. I mean, it's there and it's coming up and it's going to do a lot of things, but it cannot do everything. Now, CLIL provides students with the opportunity to use language in order to learn rather than learning to use the languages, is what I told you earlier about, the enterprise of learning about particular topics like Francophonie or French pop music, just because you're going to learn the language through them, okay? This is important. You give students the opportunity to use language in order to learn something else, something that they would have to learn anyway. And that is why CLIL will have to be elaborated, customized, and developed. And this is what we do here at the Include project. So that's all stuff very familiar to you already, and definitely by what Claudia and Mohammed said. The EU Commission policies underlining the need to do something about educational curricula, right, in the coming age or the present age, whatever this age is. Participatory CLIL-based approach, CLIL methodology in the developing educational scenarios, which is one of the main intellectual outputs, IO3 of the project, and CLIL approach in scenario implementation, the 4 C's, right, to which we add the 5th C, which is cooperation and co-creation. Now, cooperation in Include takes the form of cooperation between teachers, right? It's actually, teachers are the stars in this project, right? So non-linguistic and linguistic disciplines, teachers of non-linguistic and linguistic disciplines will have to get together and cooperate in developing and implementing the scenarios. Cooperation between teachers and students in the evaluation process, the tools Mohammed and myself are developing as part of our role in Include are exactly about getting to understand also what students think about things, right? And cooperation between teachers, students, and the community, not just researchers, but also what called stakeholders in creating new knowledge through a process of reflection, the meta bit, right? Now, incorporates Europeanity, being European. Claudia put it in a lovely way. I love that part of the. I mean, I actually, I'd like to steal that and, promote it. The notion of an agora and not of a cathedral. So a new idea of Europe, probably the only reasonable idea of Europe, given, the situation of Europe in the world we live in, as an ongoing process of reinterpreting the European past, as opposed to trying to use the past to define the future. An idea, not an idea, that goes well beyond the customs union and the free market set, right? Again, as Claudia put things, incorporates multi-modality, the application of multiple digital literacies within one medium. Actually, this is very interesting because already children growing up now, children being in the first and second decade of their lives, the second decade, you're no longer a child, but anyway. So children and teenagers already have a host of digital literacies, which people of my generation, I'm a Gen X person, right? Don't. And actually, CLIL is not perhaps there to develop these multiple digital literacies, using all sorts of digital resources, but actually incorporate them in teaching. So, when CLIL began, the idea was, oh, look, we're going to get students to familiarize themselves with some sort of, multimedia. But we don't need to do that. I mean, they are familiar. What we need to do is we now take these skills, these multiple digital literacies, and put them in the service of education. Include also adds transversal skills, key competencies as a broad set of knowledge, skills, attitudes needing for personal fulfillment based on European Council recommendations. That's part of our policy background. Main objectives: developing a common European framework for CLIL, where Mohammed and Claudia also talked about these things, improving student linguistic competencies, multilingual digital competencies, personal, social, learning to learn competencies, citizenship, cultural awareness. Cultural awareness in a world that is so well connected is something that people are lagging at. We're lagging behind when it comes to cultural awareness. Because cultural awareness, unlike what people in my generation used to believe, is not about getting to know other people's cultures, but getting to understand other people's cultures, being mindful that each culture has its own blind spots. Every culture has blind spots, has areas where you don't go or which you cannot see. Now, if it happens that a culture actually addresses or lies within your blind spots, then it's not enough to say, oh, look, we're going to watch a video about X, Y, Z and get ourselves acquainted, get ourselves to get some cultural awareness. It doesn't work like that. Because if the video, for example, is from a viewpoint that patronizes, for example, that culture, there's no cultural awareness. There's further exoticization. And that's why the multiple, resources and the multiple viewpoints incorporated into the include objectives, also in the creation of the scenarios, but not exclusively, is something that can give substantial cultural awareness as opposed to familiarization and exoticization or whatever. Also, one of the include main objectives is promoting a cooperative and collaborative school environment, anything that will have to do with breaking down the authoritarian school of old and introducing a cooperative and collaborative school environment where teachers support and guide students, right? What has been, again, a desideratum for decades. And that was all. Here is the bibliography, and this presentation is available if necessary. Thank you very much. Okay, now I cannot thank myself. Let me stop sharing the screen. And unless you have any comments or similar, we can move to, oh, okay, Mohammed, turn your microphone on.
Yes. Now Maya or Cleopatra.
Well, look, let me. Okay,
I'd like to say something.
You want to say something? Okay, make a comment, but now it's Cleopatra's presentation.
Okay, no, there is no comment, but I was really impressed by your presentation and wide knowledge of the cultural background.
Come on, man.
This is the reality. Thank you very much, people, and that's it.
Wow. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Mohammed. I know you're honest, a little bit embarrassed now. Okay, so now we move on to something that I've been really looking forward to, Cleopatra's presentation of an include teaching scenario, a model. Okay, so Cleopatra, the floor is yours. Yes. I understand Kostis is near Cleopatra, so can you please tell Cleopatra, who cannot hear us, but we can hear her too? No? Yes? Hello? Okay, look, we're ahead of schedule anyway, so maybe we should take a 5-minute break while I'm calling Cleopatra and see what's happening. Okay? So, yeah, I mean, can you hear me? No, we cannot. No. Not again. La 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 la. 1 2 1 2. Hello. Yes. Yes, as Claudia said, you know, yeah, no camera. Yeah, no camera, right? Okay. Your camera is working.
Yes.
Okay. Camera okay. No sound. No, and your microphone doesn't even show up on the participant list. So everybody else's microphone is muted. Yeah, that, as Claudia said, you know, maybe use a different headset. I'm not sure you can hear me, but Okay. Look, while Cleopatra is trying to fix the thing, yeah, I think we could take like 5, cigarette or toilet break or whatever. Of course, most of our cameras are off, but I mean, let's make this a bit more official. So time here is, yeah, that's a challenge. Time here is 12:37. It's 11:37 in Italy. So let's say we resume at 12:45 or 11:45 Central European Time. Okay, hopefully Cleopatra will have resolved the thing by then and will be able to, listen to her. And I definitely need toilet. Κλεοπάτρα, για μίλα λίγο. Ναι. Ναι. Δείχνει ότι το μικρόφωνο σου είναι ανοιχτό, τώρα έκλεισε. Ναι. Για πες τίποτα. Α, δεν ακούγεσαι καθόλου. Μήπως έχεις άλλα ακουστικά να χρησιμοποιήσεις? Μήπως υπάρχει κάποιο πρόβλημα με το βίσμα? She's still struggling to connect. So yes, I'm trying to see if we can. Hi, Lisa. Welcome. We are currently trying to solve a connectivity problem. Okay. So we had a break until now. Okay. But we're still trying to solve a connectivity problem. Okay, Cleopatra, now it shows that your microphone is on. Yeah, speak louder. I can. No. No, we can't hear you. Yes, very. Can you make it louder somehow? I can barely hear you. It sounds like you're very far, far away. Very far away. Can you take? Okay, look at me. Can you take that, the mic thing and put it closer to your mouth or something? Hardly. Yeah, we can hear you from very, very, very far away. There's something about the volume of your microphone. No, now we don't hear anything. No, we cannot hear a thing. Sorry.
Βγάλε μου το μικρόφωνο.
Ναι. Εκεί. That's it.
All right. Yes.
That's it. No, όχι, σας ακούμε τώρα. Σας ακούμε. Τώρα δεν σας ακούμε. Ωραία.
Τώρα για δες.
Ναι, ακούγεται. Μ' ακούτε?
Το έβγαλες αυτό.
Ακούγεται τώρα. Ναι, ακούγεται τώρα.
Okay.
Ναι.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, go ahead. Please.
If you can hear me, that's fine, because I cannot hear you now. So
Yeah.
it's either
We
I hear
can
you or you can hear me.
hear you loud
if you can hear me,
and
you
clear.
just write to me in the chat when I can start.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, although I cannot hear you. Anyway, at least you can hear me.
No, we hear you and see you
Okay.
both.
Perfect. So I'll share my presentation. Θες να κλείσεις λίγο την πόρτα, Δημητρή? Okay, I suppose you can see it.
Yes.
They cannot hear you, Mohammed.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, so I can see. Okay, so you can, okay, all right, now I can see the chat. So, okay, too many problems today. So, you know, this technology sometimes drives me crazy. Okay, so, okay. My name is Cleopatra Kalogerakou. Okay, most of you know me. So I'm going to present a scenario, an include scenario. So of course, I suppose that I missed many of the things that you said. So obviously you talked about the 4 characteristics and the criteria. So this is just have a quick look. We can see that the criteria set by the University of Cyprus for the evaluation of scenarios. So the evaluation is based on the 4 basic characteristics, the multimodal approach to creating attractive and professional resources to support understanding of both content and language, using various multimodal techniques and devices. Then transversal skills, key competencies, as I heard at some point that were mentioned as well, which we should equip students with. And skills such as critical thinking, creativity, innovation, evaluation of information, autonomous learning, among others, are of great importance. Then we have Europeanity. I think Claudia talked about that, although I couldn't hear her, which refers to the common European identity, the sense of belonging to the European Union, that students should be made aware of. And finally, CLIL. I think Phyllis talked extensively about it, although again I missed many things, which involves content, language, skills, and competencies. It's important that the linguistic aspects be presented through content, but also scaffolding or differentiation techniques be used in order to reduce cognitive load. So let's start with the scenario. The title of the scenario is Tourism in Europe. It was created by Ms. Luigi in collaboration with me as a language teacher, and it deals with tourism issues in society, economy, and environment. So we can see, first of all, just to say that in the script, in the description of an include scenario, its activity follows a certain structure, as you can see here: time, type of activity, class organization, and actions, tasks that take place. And also to say that each scenario consists of at least 3 teaching periods. So the specific one has 4 teaching periods. So we can see here that before we have a brainstorming activity before the lesson start, and the students are provided with a digital mind map. Obviously, I need to, if I click on it, yeah, I suppose that I will have to move to switch screens. So sorry, that will take some time. Okay, so this is a digital mind map as part of initial evaluation, so that information is based on previous knowledge, but also raise expectations. So the students can collaborate on this tool and share ideas on different aspects of tourism. As you can see, definition, and to give a definition of tourism, types of tourism, reasons for traveling, as well as factors for the increase in tourism. At the same time, the teacher comments on the students' ideas and provides immediate feedback, since this tool provides this facility. So, okay. So we move on to here, during the first teaching period, there is a short discussion. Okay, after presenting the mind map that they have completed, there are some personal questions. If they have traveled, why, what sites they know, what kind of tourism they like. So personalization is an important part of the communication element, since it involves true communication, as learners communicate real information about themselves, but it also scaffolds content. Okay, we move to the second and third activities of the first teaching period. So here we have concepts which are introduced. I'm gonna share the other one again, just to show you. Sorry for the delay, but okay. Here we have, as you can see, it's a PowerPoint presentation, which is also available online on Prezi. And we can see that we have basic concepts in tourism, the factors contributing to the high increase in tourism after 1950. Okay, we also have types of tourism: mass tourism, alternative, domestic, and international tourism. And we also have the impacts, positive and negative impacts of tourism. Okay. So this activity is mainly about content, but language is also stressed. Sorry, to move to the next one. Through collocations, mainly words that are commonly found together, are used together, such as, sorry, okay, let me share with you the worksheet. Okay, so we have, as I said, collocations like geographical location, permanent residence, tourist destinations, which are later on assessed through different activities. So based on the information presented, students are asked to fill in a worksheet in groups. Here, a differentiation is taken into account since the groups are mixed to cater for less able students regarding language level and capabilities. So this worksheet is interactive, and it includes websites and videos, and it is also appropriate for asynchronous assignment. So the questions, as we can see, involve making conclusions from an infographic, and also noting down the benefits of tourism by visiting two more sites, as we can see here. They just, if they use it online, they just click on the videos or the websites, and they can see the information. Okay, the first two, actually, A and B activities are done in the classroom. The rest of the questions on the worksheet are assigned for homework, and they involve thinking about the problems tourists create in a country, as well as debate on a statement by justifying their arguments. Okay, sorry, let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so of course, teachers can, there are lots of activities, and teachers who are going to implement the scenario can choose which activities to do or assign, taking into consideration the students' level and capabilities. A glossary of terms is also available for support, especially for less able students. So we see that with the interactive worksheets, the websites, the videos, infographics, all of them meet the multimodality element. We have transversal skills, information processing, critical thinking, that is critically assess the information on the website and answer the questions, which together with the multimodal approach can lead, in a way we can say, to autonomous learning. Now, if I move to the second teaching period, so after discussing students' answers on the worksheet, we have a presentation again, another presentation. Okay, back to the presentation. Sorry, it takes a while. Okay, this is the second presentation. This one is focused on Europe, the European tourist market. Through graphs, we can see also the countries with the largest number of international tourist arrivals in 2019, and also leading European city tourism destinations, accompanied by with beautiful photos of major European cities. And finally, the national tourist market is explained. That is the advantages and disadvantages of Greek tourism. Okay, back to the presentation. And sorry, now I'll go back to sorry about that, but I have to move from one tab to the other. Okay, this is the second worksheet. It's an interactive worksheet again, in which students visualize various graphs and try to interpret them. Actually, there are less and more challenging questions so that every student feels confident enough to provide an answer. For example, we can see this simple question here. Okay, just to find the three first countries, the first three countries on the graph, which is quite easy, but there is also a question that has students compare and find things in common. Here, by visiting another website, students also need to find the characteristics of Europe which attract tourists. And for asynchronous learning, that is for homework, we have more demanding activities, the factors that influence tourist decisions, study a climate map, and explain why some destinations are more popular than others, that is making connections between climate and tourism. And there is also a project at this point to plan a 2-day tour in Attica, in Attiki, for foreign students by taking information again from a website, a real life task, since in our school, as well as other schools, there are exchange programs, and we often receive students from other European countries. Okay, and back to the presentation. Moving on. Okay, that's the second, as I said, the second activity and the second worksheet. Okay, and we move to the third teaching period. So the third part of tourism is presented here, and involves alternative and sustainable tourism. The prerequisites for sustainable tourism development, what can be done to implement it, how it came about, its characteristics, types of alternative tourism, religious, health tourism, agritourism, and so on, and their benefits. To provide such information this time, a tailor-made video is created by the teacher, which is then uploaded on YouTube, and then by using the H5p platform, questions are inserted. Let's have a look at it. Okay, this is the platform, the H5p platform, and we have the video that is custom made, and there are interactive questions. As we can see, for example, we can have fill in the blanks questions like that, fill in the missing words, or there could be true-false questions on the video. And also multiple choice questions. Okay, so this is the how the new information is presented. So this one can be done in class or in the lab, in the computer lab, or even for asynchronously for formative assessment, we would say. So if I stop that and move to the worksheet that accompanies the video. So this is the worksheet again, which is about the importance of sustainability in the tourism industry, with two videos, with two short videos, as you can see here. The benefits of its systematic implementation for local communities, designing an advertising campaign, tips for the greenest travels, and also forms types of alternative tourism development in Europe, food tourism as well as searching and finding sites and activities for a nature lover, another real life task. Okay, I'll stop it again. So back to the presentation. Okay, we have more collocations here that we can find, and we move to the. Okay, these are the activities for the third teaching period, and the last one. Okay, it's the fourth teaching period. It is recommended that the fourth teaching period be done asynchronously. Traveling is an integral part of tourism, and being important of important European cities, sites, airports, and ports is a life skill. So that's why a digital map is created on Padlet, and students are asked to find information after, again, visiting useful sites. Let me show you the digital map. Okay, here it is. It works. It is a Google map, so it works like it. So they can search and and find important all the countries and important cities and sites on this map. So there are some examples. They can, for example, find the airports like that. They can post photos, videos, as well as text information, and they can also, of course, rate and comment on other students' posts. The same is done by the teacher. Okay, they can also record themselves talking about the site or whatever they want to. So actually, they are asked to see all posts, so that they get the information about everything that is on the map. And this knowledge will be tested later on. Okay. So back to the presentation. Okay, so that's the fourth teaching period, and finally we have the summative evaluation. Content and language are tested. You can see that content is tested through a quiz on iSpring with many types of questions. Let me show it to you. Okay, so this is the quiz, and there are different kinds of questions. There are true, false questions about testing the knowledge that they have gained throughout the lessons. So there can be also matching activities, match the types of tourism with their basic characteristics. There can also filling in the gaps. Sorry about that, but no. Okay, sorry about that. We can see filling in the gaps. Okay, we can also have matching multiple choice as well. Also matching cities with the countries, or airports with cities or ports. So even at the end, there is also maps, some interactive maps where they have to click and find the countries according to their flags. Okay, and okay, we can see here, okay, language practice. So I move away, sorry again, I'm moving away from the PowerPoint to see you the other types of activities. So language is mostly here tested through H5p activities. Okay, it is language but in content. So for example, here we have students filling the gaps with a suitable verb in passive voice, which we meet in the text. And of course, it is about content. It is about the advantages and disadvantages of mass tourism. So this way, the grammar is tested as well. So another one is this one, for example, an easier activity where passive voice is provided, the verbs are provided, so they just have to drag and drop the right form. Here we have another one testing the collocations, words that are found together. And of course, there is vocabulary, a glossary with all the words that they need. For support, the meaning in their native language could also be added here. And of course, here there are different kinds of activities that they can do, that they can practice the vocabulary. Okay. And sorry, last part to finish with, because I think I have taken long, wait a minute. Okay. Okay. So, oh, and of course we have some expansion ideas, as well a list of informational websites throughout the lessons and for reference. And finally, if we go to back, okay, to the criteria that we saw at the beginning, with reference to the specific scenario. So we can see that concerning multimodality, there is a range of digital resources and tools. There are resources for teaching purposes, like the videos, the websites that have been used. There are digital tools for teaching purposes, that is the custom-made video, YouTube or Prezi, but also digital tools for student use. Some are more drill and practice, like H5p or Prezi, but also more collaborative tools like the mind map and the Padlet. On the right hand, we can see the general key competencies in the scenario as stated in the council recommendation. And in the middle, we have the learning outcomes as specified by the teacher and which are closely related to the competencies. So we can see some of the learning outcomes to understand the principles of tourism, to understand, analyze the impact generated by tourism, the evolutionary nature of tourism, to identify tourist areas and destinations, as well as finally to develop critical thinking skills about the processes of tourism development. And as for Europeanity, we can see how the topic of the scenario is linked to European values. The European Union motto, United in Diversity, is promoted through awareness of cultural characteristics, heritage, common goals, but also realization of the strong development prospects that bond all European countries, so that we actively work towards a better and sustainable tourism in Europe. And finally, CLIL aspects are prevalent since content and language go hand in hand. There is a lot of communication and collaboration, real and digital, and grammar is implicitly taught as it appears through content, and scaffolding techniques are adopted to reduce the cognitive load. That's all. Thank you for your attention, and I apologize for all these problems.
Thank you. Thank you, Cleopatra. Thanks for this.
I cannot hear you now.
Okay, fine. So yes,
I think I'll change.
everybody else I hope can. So I'm just.
I hope that you heard me, right? You know, I do not have enough feedback. Okay, thank you.
Okay, fine, good. Cleopatra cannot hear us, so I think all comments will have to be addressed to her individually. I think we can now finish with the final presentation for today, which is by Mohammed Shormani, the researcher here at the University of Cyprus, who's going to basically give us the lowdown on what we as University of Cyprus are doing in this project. So, Mohammed, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phoebus, and hello again, everyone. I'm going to present the role of the University of Cyprus include, as usual, Mohammed Shormani is accompanying always Phoebus when I to this. I hope I pronounce the letter name of Phoebus correctly. So, we first outlined the elements to be evaluated, and we drafted the linguistic and non-linguistic elements to be evaluated include. Linguistic element include grammar, pragmatics. Grammar here we mean syntax, morphology, pragmatics, and then vocabulary. Non-linguistic elements include content. For example, one of the questions, is content in general presented effectively? Does content include all the necessary components? Does content reflect follow a cognitive sequence? Competences, for example, are students' competences emphasized? Do students cultivate competences relevant to the community? Do students cultivate competence relevant to their future needs? Then language-related competences. For example, is language relevant to the subject matter in each education scenario? Does the language for students' age, needs, future plans, etc.? Is the language involved connected to student daily life and culture? Is the language use connected to European setting? Then culture. Is the common European cultural heritage emphasized? Does language content promote cultural diversity? Does the language content make cultural diversity relevant? And then cognition. We compose, several items like concerning Bloom's will or taxonomy hierarchy involved in each education scenario. Does HOTS language involve verbs such as analyze, contrast? Though we later on, formalized all these in several formats. Does lots language involves verbs such as describe, state, define, form, classify, identify, etc.? Do language items used enable students to apply the new information in their daily life? Communication, for example, is Each scenario built in a communicative, ideally interactive manner. And as Cleopatra was describing the scenario, I was really impressed by the scenario, how they built. I was just having one concern regarding time allocation to the activities. I will just ask after finishing my presentation, are all types of communication, linguistic, audiovisual, and kinesthetic made use of in a scenario? Are holistic ways of learning and learning from practical hands-on experiences used in each scenario? Is authentic communication emphasized, even ignoring language mistakes? Because sometimes we focus on communication, how we deliver messages to our students, and how students themselves deliver their messages without paying attention to, for example, language mistakes. Creativity also, is student creativity generally encouraged in each scenario? Does language content encourage the students to be creative, and so on? Community is the real world around the student and is very essential to CLIL approach. Does each scenario relate or help students relate content to the world around them, and so on? Autonomous learning, are students' needs and interests incorporated into the education scenarios? Are students' own ideas or innovation taken into consideration? Are students' needs, ideas, thoughts responded to immediately by teachers? Transversal skills competences, are transversal skills competences employed in include scenarios? To what extent, for example, these are, and as we saw with Cleopatra, these were very incorporated and to the best manner. Do scenario help students cultivate critical thinking, innovative thinking, and so on, problem solving? And we have also seen in Cleopatra's presentation that these are all made use of. Evaluation framework for include education outputs. This framework includes an ex-ante evaluation questionnaire. It aims to provide evaluation tools and techniques to syllabi designers and policymakers of include project to develop the 40 education scenarios. In this questioning, all item questions, checklists, etc. of the elements of evaluation discussed above have been converted into questionnaire items. Questionnaire form, several criteria, indicators, and scales have been designed, such as Likert scales, multiple choice, checklist, Boolean, yes, no, etc. Include evaluation and quality plan. We also prepared the include evaluation and quality plan. We focused on the terminology included in the include project. Evaluation tools also, like questionnaires, interviews, surveys, rubrics, and so on. This is we also collected the qualitative and quantitative indicators of include. As you can see, number of teachers involved, and so on. And also we have also alluded to these in the in my previous presentation. Evaluation and quality criteria. Evaluation should be, I mean, in terms of include, it should be complete, it should be accurate, relevant, deep, adhering to uniform affairs and structure, punctual, under which we can find impact, sustainability, and functionality. Include monitoring and evaluation. Scope of evaluation. Include focus on the monitoring and evaluation system of the project, aims to ensure the quality, the promotion, and excellence of all the planned activities during the whole project lifetime and after its completion. Purpose of evaluation: the include project evaluation for all include activities. deliverables, intellectual outputs. All these aims to support the project and to provide constant help and opportunities for the continuous improvement of project processes and the products created. Dimension of evaluation, formative evaluation, summative evaluation, and also applicability in these. I mean, for example, after the lifetime of the project, we will focus on how these, for example, scenarios or the project or the include framework will be applied in future experiences or in future experience, or also applied to schools, secondary, upper and lower secondary schools all over Europe, or those who would like to apply it. Methodology of evaluation. The methodology of evaluation that will be used will be an amalgamated approach consisting of quantitative and qualitative methodologies. Qualitative methods, analysis of data, impression questionnaires, etc. Qualitative methods, the first is quantitative. Qualitative methods, exploratory interviews, semi-structural interviews, focus groups, constant observation, and so on. We have also prepared some templates and forms: template for deliverables, template for meeting agenda, template for project minutes, template also for presentation. Our contribution to intellectual output one were a new perspective about the concept of Europeanity, evaluating, include evaluation tools, types of assessment tools, evaluation structure and tools. Within all, within each one, we provided actually several things that will be used, like, for example, evaluation tools, questionnaires, rubrics, and so on. And finally, we prepared questions for evaluating, actually with collaboration with other partners from Italy, CNR, yeah, and also the first experimental school of Athens, and NATUN. I don't excuse me for I don't remember exactly the acronym. So in this particular questionnaire, we actually squeezed. We made a great effort to just focus on 4 aspects: modality, transfer skills, key competences, Europeanity, and then CLIL. And for example, we provide, for example, in multi-modality, you can see the example here. The use of digital materials in these scenarios meet students' age and capabilities. So these are Likert scale. Transfer skills, key competences. Transversal skills, competences are referred to as a broad set of knowledge, skills, attitude, etc., in light of tomorrow's society and world of work. And this is an example: information processing, ICT competences, analyzing, locating, accessing information on web are emphasized in each scenario. And then we will evaluate by taking. But let me tell you frankly that the scenario presented up to now by our colleagues, they were really very excellent. And so Europeanity here, also this is one example of Europeanity. The scenario emphasizes Europeanity in terms of sometimes I found, and because of this we left it like that, I found that the scenario emphasizes Europeanity in several terms, like European culture, European history, and so on. So we could then sorry. we could then choose more than one or mark more than one aspect, and the CLIL or evaluating the CLIL, we poses or compose items like this. As I told you, all these were with the help and collaboration of our partners. And then we will continue now working on the evaluation according to the evaluation timeline we set forth in the evaluation and quality plan. As you see, for example, here, we are supposed now to provide continuous evaluation and assessment, and providing constant monitoring, providing constant feedback, assessing the first interim report, releasing the first evaluation report on the project. And here, for example, we will provide constant monitoring, provide also constant feedback, also the release or assessing the second and third interim reports, releasing the second evaluation report of the project, and finally we will release the final evaluation report of the project, also with the collaboration of our great partners. So that's it. Thank you very much. And if you have any question, please.
Thank you, Mohammed. If there are any questions, please tell us. Okay. Right. Yes.
I have just one comment, or might be a question to Cleopatra. Do you hear me, Cleopatra?
Probably not.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have this connectivity thing. Actually, yeah, Cleopatra would be a very interesting person to talk to, because she presented one of the scenarios, and actually it's interesting to see how we could discuss it, but unfortunately she has connectivity problems. So is there anyone who would like to make any questions or comments? Okay. Right. So yeah. Okay. So let me thank you for this